Hey everyone, Joe here. In this episode, Scott and I had the privilege of chatting with Robert Rogers, an Air Force senior enlisted leader, entrepreneur, and author. During our discussion, we talked about the vital role of mentorship, the importance of embracing challenges, authenticity, and much, much more. Enjoy.
Life, learning, leadership, the Llama Lounge.
Yo, welcome back to the Llama Lounge, a dialogue on all things life, learning, and leadership. This is Joe Bogdan. I have with me my brother, Dub Scott Green. What's up, Scott?
How's it going, Joe?
It's going well, man. Happy birthday.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
I appreciate that.
You're 38 now?
Something like that.
Yeah. Times two or?
No. not that high up. No. Yeah, it's been a good day so far. It's hot, but it's been a good day.
That's good.
It's humid. I had to take 2 showers today. Just one was the wake up shower, and the other one was the post washing the car shower. So
yeah. Then you probably have to get another one in.
I probably have another one after this one. I just had to turn the AC down because it felt really hot. So yeah, it's been a good day so far. Thank you.
I don't miss humidity. So Northern California dry heat. I appreciate that. So Scott, we have another amazing guest in the lounge with us today.
Yes,
Robert
sir.
Rogers. How are you, Rob?
I'm doing great.
Yeah, man. Thanks for coming on. And for our listeners, Rob is an Air Force Reserve Chief Master Sergeant. He's a disabled veteran, author, entrepreneur, and all-around Renaissance man. We appreciate you being on, brother.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate this opportunity.
Yeah, man. So I know we kind of connected through some of the stuff that's been, whether it's Quarantine University and everything else that's kind of launched. And I've noticed, that you're really big into a lot of the same things that Scott and I and everything that the Llama Lounge is about. So we're really excited about having you on.
Yeah, notice the same thing with you guys. Watch your videos, watch your postings and stuff like that. And it's really refreshing to see so many different leaders. That's one of the great things that this quarantine stuff has done, is really allowed a lot of leaders to take their messages of leadership and growth to a different platform that really reaches more people than ever before.
Yeah, 100%. It's like if you're going to look for silver linings, there's definitely that. And I think, Scott and I, we've talked a couple times in the past. It felt like we're kind of on an island when you're doing stuff, when you don't see what everybody else is doing. So it's really cool. So, hey, Rob, whenever we have a guest on the show, we like them to share their story, because we find that, we can learn a lot from the experiences of others. So how did Rob Rogers become the Rob Rogers we are talking to today?
He came this way through a lot of really tough moments in his life. I've had a lot of hardships in my life ever since I was a kid, growing up without a whole lot of money, and as a minority in my neighborhood, all the way through in the high school, where didn't really have a lot of confidence in my intellectual abilities. I was a little overweight, and whenever you're a teenager, that plays into a lot of things. And then coming into the Air Force, really completely different environment, not really believing in my abilities once again, and having to navigate 2 divorces, some stress and anxiety issues, mental health issues, multiple deployments, you name it. So I've really come to where I'm at today through my experiences and through battling through them, learning that all of them have lessons in them, all of them have knowledge in them, and really trying to take what I have learned and apply it to not only myself, but to the people around me. So that way, for one, they can feel like they're not alone. And 2, hopefully they can learn through the lens of my experience. So they can improve themselves without having to really feel that pressure of having that finger pointed at them, like, hey, you need to fix this. Like, they can just see my experience and just go, ooh, I think I'm headed down that path. Maybe I ought to reevaluate what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. Go ahead, Scott.
Yeah, I was going to say that's, we tend to explore things on our own so often and I think exploration is important, but at the same time, if someone's already been there, done that, and you can see the outcomes of someone else's mistakes, it's a good lesson to just not follow certain paths, because they can share their experiences for us and let us know how it turned out.
Yeah, absolutely. And I believe that that's one of our responsibilities as leaders is to communicate what we've failed at, right? To let people know, like, hey, we're not perfect and we didn't get here on a silver platter. Like, a lot of us get there bloodied and bruised up, but we can help people avoid mistakes because we've been through the door, right? We know what it feels like. And we can speak true experience and truth into people's lives, as long as we're allowed to be a little bit vulnerable and maybe take that take the chance that somebody judges us for something that we've done.
Yeah, I definitely think, and that a lot of that comes with maturity, and I know we talk about it a lot here on the lounge, and with other people too, with other leaders out there, that it seems like, when you're first coming up, you're busy trying to impress people versus, truly inspiring people. And part of that inspiration is, showing people that you can fail, that you're not infallible, and that they can do what you're doing as well and succeed. So I think that's a huge part of it. So I really appreciate you sharing your story.
Yeah, absolutely. And to your point, right, whenever you're younger, you do want to pretend like you know it all. Like, I remember so many moments where I became defensive about my not knowing something, right? You're sitting in a room
Hmm.
and everybody nods their head like, oh, you guys know what this is? And everybody nods their head, yeah. And those
Yeah.
are really, half the people in the room have no clue what's going on. And so if somebody will just have the courage to kind of sound like they don't know what they're talking about, like, now I raise my hand all the time, like, hey, I don't know what that is, can you explain that to me? And so many
Yeah.
people in the room come afterward and they go, hey man, thanks, because I had no idea what they were talking about either. I just didn't want to be the guy who raised his hand.
Right.
So
Right.
yeah,
Or
not a problem. Like,
yeah. Or they ask like seven more questions afterwards. Like, okay, now I know I'm not the only one that didn't know anything.
exactly. Yeah. So yeah, let's just cut all that inefficiency out and, like, just raise your hand and, like, be the guy who's like, yep, I don't know. Because yeah, if we don't know, like, if we're not communicating on the same page, then what's the point? And if people
Exactly.
aren't getting your message because they don't understand but they're too afraid to speak up, well, somebody can raise their hand, and just having that courage to do that helps the entire room understand and get better and be more efficient with their time and their resources.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. So before we start getting really deep into some more of the conversation that we're already kind of get into, this is some awesome stuff. I was wondering, could you share a little bit more about, like, okay, so what did you do in the service, and then versus, and also what are you kind of doing now?
Okay. Yeah. In the service, I came in as a intel guy, so I'm a signals intelligence guy. I
Mm.
didn't know that I took that job whenever I went to the recruiter. I wanted to work in radio, and so I asked the recruiter, "Hey, what's in radio?" And he read off a job that had radio waves in the title,
Nice.
and I was like, "Oh, fantastic!" And I didn't know any better, and the internet wasn't in your pocket whenever I was coming in, so I had no way to check it out. And so next thing you know, I became a signals intelligence analyst, and I was not good at math and science growing up, and so I didn't really think I was very well equipped for that job, but I was able to battle it out, and I did a really good job learning and applying those skills. And then I've pretty much been everywhere. I've lived in Germany, I've lived in Korea. I've done 5 tours between contracting and military job in the Middle East. Um, had a lot of really cool opportunities to travel and do some amazing things. So I've got to apply my signals intelligence and intelligence skills kind of all over the world. And I got to tell you, joining the Air Force was the absolute best decision I've ever made in my life.
Oh yeah. Oh
So,
yeah.
Robert, did you come in as active duty, or did you come in as reserves, or how did that work?
Yeah, so I'm a person who likes to change things up quite a bit. So I came in as active duty.
Hmm.
In 2009, I left active duty after being kind of upset with how they were handling my assignments.
Mm.
And I was moving about once every 2 years. I couldn't really
Wow.
establish myself anywhere. So I went reserves, came out here to Colorado, did reserve duty for 2 squadrons. I was an AGR, so full-time reserve at my first squadron, transitioned to a TR status, traditional reserve, in another squadron, deployed as a contractor because I really enjoyed that job. That started to take a toll on my family, so I ended up leaving that position, moved all the way back to Ohio, became an AGR again, did that for about 2.5 years, came back out here to Colorado as an AGR, did that for about 3 years, and then transitioned out. Now I'm an IMA working for Indo-PACOM, doing a Joint Intel Operations Center Senior Enlisted Leader for JDAT Fort Worth.
Oh, it's very cool. So what are you doing in your civilian capacity besides the contracting some stuff, right? But there's quite a few other things you're doing also, right?
Sure, yeah, always. So I'm the guy who, whenever people asked you what you wanted to be when you grew up, I can never answer it because I didn't know. So I just chose to be everything. So I do contracting for space control and defense, and I do defense analyst work for a company here in town. In addition to that, I'm an author, and I do some speaking and mentor sessions for groups. And then my wife and I and my 3 kids were restoring an old horse property here in Colorado Springs and trying to make it into an event center and Airbnb property sometime down the line. So we try to do a lot of different things.
Nice.
Keeping your hands full. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So how did you, a couple questions here. How did you come into the sort of mentorship and speaking engagement field? And do you have a certain like audience or topic that you are most passionate about?
I came into it because, for what it's worth, I didn't have a whole lot of great leaders growing up in my military career, and I always looked for the person or the thing that like really spoke to me. And so I had some good examples as I went along, but I didn't have like that one person who really stood out until I came here and I met that person through a relationship with my wife. It was a coworker of hers, and that he does speaking, and he's actually in the process of writing a book, and he really helped me understand that I could take all these things that I've learned and gone through, and I can apply them in my own special way. So I started writing a book because, for one, I finally believed in my ability to put my story together and my experiences and have enough confidence in what I've gone through, and allow myself to be judged and to be vulnerable by putting my story out there, because so many people feel like they're alone, but they're not. And the only way for them to not feel alone is to share an experience with somebody. And I do that with my book. So I chose that path because I like writing, and because I think a lot of people need and want good mentorship, and they're not finding it where they're at. And I get those messages all the time from people that say, hey, thank you. Like, I really needed this. I felt like I was alone, or, my senior NCO core here isn't very good. And I really needed an outside perspective. And I really appreciate that you wrote this stuff down in your book so that way I could get those things. So that's kind of how I came to it. The speaking, it didn't come naturally. I had a pretty strong lisp whenever I was growing up, and wasn't real confident in public speaking. But if you read the book, you'll find there was a senior NCO in my ALS class who asked me to not speak at the graduation because I had a lisp. He didn't think that I was qualified for public speaking. So because of that, I had a chip on my shoulder, and I just really worked at that skill and overcame some of those vulnerabilities that I feel whenever I speak. And now I feel pretty confident with it.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome. Yeah, that's amazing. That's full circle. And I think, and that senior NCO, we'll probably talk a little bit about that senior NCO that did that said that to you in a little bit. But I mean, I think that's really cool that that you took it in that way. Sometimes we do need that chip on our shoulder to help us get past, some of the adversities that we face. But you talk a lot about, you've been talking about your book a little bit. Can you dive into that? Because like, what is, you kind of talked about it, like the passion that kind of drove you towards it, but what's the book about, and what's the title of the book?
So the title of the book is The Paperback Mentor. I would say it's really about a bunch of experiences that I've gone through and hardships that I've learned to find the silver lining in. One of the chapters is called How Low Performers Are Helping You Succeed. Mm-hmm. And that it's meant to give you a different way of looking at that person who's at work, just challenging you. And every day you're frustrated and you're only thinking about one side of that coin. But if you think about the skills that person's bringing out in you, the work that they're making you put in, pushing you out of your comfort zone, you can really appreciate those people in your life because you understand that they're helping you grow into a better person. So the book is really just about looking at these negative experiences that we all go through and understanding that these lessons that we're learning as we're going through these things, and that this is really improving us and eroding those sharp edges that we have and making us better people.
Yeah, I feel like there's a story behind that, how low performers are helping you succeed.
There absolutely is, and you can read it in the book. I think
Oh
it's
yeah.
There you
chapter
go.
2 or chapter 3.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is
So,
amazing. Yeah.
so your book, does it have a particular target audience in mind? Is it something you think maybe it's more geared towards military or civilian audiences, or what do you think?
So I wrote it to be more geared towards both military and civilian, really leadership
Mm,
stuff. But
Yeah.
I really found that the military community has taken to it. And I've also found that it works really well in group settings. So there's questions at the end of each chapter. And
Right.
it sounds like the chapters are specifically built to take up less than 15 minutes of your day. That's, if you read the first chapter, taking back 1%, and 1% is about 15 minutes or 14.4 minutes per day.
Hmm.
And the book is intended to help you establish
mm,
good habits by taking back 1% of your day to do something for you, for your own improvement.
That's
That
great.
also equates to about 100.8 minutes per week. And so what I've been finding is that people will read a chapter. It takes about 15 minutes to read a chapter. They answer the questions in private, and then they come together in a group and they share their experiences that the chapter brings out whenever I ask the questions. And it really opens up conversations with people, and it really connects them, because a lot of people don't share some of the things that come up in these conversations just in natural conversation at work. But whenever they have some structure to build it around through this chapter and these questions, then it makes the conversation flow much easier. And I've gotten some incredible feedback about how it's opened up teams and helped people connect, and even increased morale in teams because people feel more
Yeah.
connected in their team.
yeah.
It sounds like it'd be great for like if any organization is trying to put together maybe a leadership development program, like a comprehensive leadership development program. It sounds like it'd be a great resource to throw in that mix.
Yes, there's numerous organizations right now, both military and civilian, who are bringing on this book. I've been doing the appropriate copyright release and other paperwork with them, but there's several organizations that are actually incorporating the book into their leadership course because it's so different than
Mhm.
the traditional book that's written and tells you what to do and whatever other stuff. And plus, I write it from an enlisted leadership perspective, which I think is just one of those voices that's not very well communicated in writing. Every time I ever pick up a book, it's, an officer who had, an O6 or a general and this really huge strategic kind of viewpoints
High level, yeah.
and yeah, these things that you can't really relate to when you're, whenever I was a tech sergeant, I didn't get any of that. Like I didn't understand it. It didn't connect with me. But the stuff that I write is very raw and it's very on the ground, and it speaks to the person who's going through whatever they're going through at the time. And I, I really would encourage, people to share their enlisted leadership experiences in whatever media form that is, such as this podcast that we're doing right now, because it's something that people really want. I hear it all the time, and people crave that leadership perspective from the people who they are like, that they can emulate, not the people who are so far out there that they don't even know the person or they can't reach that potential level that person's at.
Yeah, absolutely. There's times where I even sit there and listen to one of our episodes or some of the other folks that we know that are doing these podcasts, and I do often think like, man, when I was a staff sergeant, I wish I could have heard that conversation, right? I mean,
Exactly.
like, I mean, it really, I just think I was like, oh, that was a cool topic that they talked
Yeah.
about, and
Yeah.
vulnerability is a big part that I think, as I was coming up, I definitely didn't hear that word very much, and
Mm-mm.
it's so important to leadership, right?
Absolutely, especially today, right? The biggest way that you can be a leader is through influence, and
Mhm.
influence is gained, right, through having a relationship with people. You don't influence people by telling people what to do. You build relationships with them, and then you can be influential in a positive way. So yeah, influence is everything these days. People don't even really react very well to like overbearing authority anymore.
Mm-mm, mm-mm. No, I tell you what, I remember being a senior airman staff sergeant, and I was kind of on that cusp of, when you first start supervising people and you get that privilege to be able to be someone's like first line supervisor. And I was still learning a lot. And I remember the biggest lessons I learned from our work for people, like, that's not how to act. I am not going to follow that person's lead. Like I remember thinking back, like, when I become a tech sergeant, I will not act like that. When I become a master sergeant, I will not act like that. And so I remember some of the best ways of learning how to be a great supervisor was knowing who to emulate and who not to emulate. And a lot of it was how they made me feel, right? If someone made me feel great, they made me feel important, that's the person I wanted to emulate. But if someone was authoritative and didn't build a relationship, my mentality was like, well, I don't want to be like that when I'm that rank.
Absolutely. And so a funny story. So whenever I was Airman Rogers, I had a supervisor that I didn't care much for. And so I didn't feel like this person was helping me grow in my military career. And I had all these goals and all this other stuff. So I wrote him a letter requesting a new supervisor,
Mm.
outlining literally all the things that he was doing wrong. And I gave it to him. And I gave it to our chain of command, very confident that I was about to get a new supervisor. And one of the things I learned from that experience was they were like, "Hey, Aaron Rodgers, you don't get to choose your supervisor. Like, just because you don't like him doesn't mean that it's not a good experience for you." And I've always taken that. And whenever somebody will ask me for a new supervisor now because they're not getting along with their supervisor, I think these people are going to have to learn about conflict resolution and working with
Mhm.
difficult
Absolutely.
people, right? These people are going to have to learn how to bite your tongue and cooperate and all these other things. So yeah, it may not be helping you grow, and it may not be the miracle grow to your career, right, where you're taking off, but you're digging deep roots whenever you're going through those
Hmm.
experiences, and that's what keeps you resilient more than anything else. So I don't too often take people out of the positions where they're having a hard time with their supervisor, because those are experiences that they need to learn. They
Mhm.
need to see those poor examples so they can know what not to do and what that feels like. And if I continue to save people from those experiences, then they're not getting the education that they need from those experiences with those people.
Yeah. I mean, it's like totally sheltering them from that. You're just constantly coddling them and taking them away from those situations where they can learn. Just like you had talked about how performers are helping you succeed. I mean, even that senior NCO that told you that you shouldn't be, the speaker at the event. I mean, that did something for you, right? I mean, it could have went one way, but it did something for you and it helped you become who you are today.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things about those low performers, right, is they challenge you as a leader. Like they make you get out of a comfort zone. So whenever you're frustrated with one of those guys or gals who just can't seem to get things right, you have to go do and try different things as a leader to
Mhm.
be able to deal with a situation that you're handed. This is your problem. This is your responsibility, and you have to grow and you have to meet the challenge. And they do that for you, right?
Mhm.
They
Oh,
they
yeah.
force you to learn the rules and policies and the
Mhm.
regulations of your organization. And I think that's a often overlooked fact, because I got so good at paperwork with my first low performer. I literally got promoted on it because I knew all the Air Force forms and the processes. Whenever I went and took my PME test, like, I actually knew answers. I was very thankful because this guy put me through the ringer, and I learned so much that I actually tested higher and I got promoted.
That's
Um,
awesome.
they provoke difficult conversations, right? Like, people don't like them, but they're really important to have. And if you don't have a person who challenges you, sometimes those opportunities don't present themselves. They
Yeah,
help you
absolutely.
develop relationships. So one of the great things about a low performer is you get so frustrated, you usually go and talk to mentors and stuff. Like, you build relationships with supervisors and mentors as this low performer, as your uniting force. So you can actually enter a key relationship in your military or your civilian career because of a low performer and the struggles that you're going through, and you seeking that advice and trying to figure out how to make that work. And then finally, you learn enough to be helpful to others. So people who give advice and have experience, they have that stuff for a reason. Like when you ask somebody and they can answer on the fly why they do what they do, or what this experience meant to them, it's because they've gone through it, and probably several times, right? So you finally have enough knowledge and experience, and you can help people whenever they're struggling because you've seen these things, and you can say, this is how I would handle it, right? And or that, maybe consider this whenever you're going through this, or maybe you got to read this book, or do these things. This is what's helped me in the past. So I think those are the things that low performers give you that you wouldn't normally get if you just had those really awesome rock star people,
Yeah.
and just having to write a bunch of award packages and
Uh-huh.
and clap your hands and eat cake.
Right.
Well, I remember, so for a while I was a career assistance advisor. And so we got to, I got to work with a lot of different chiefs. The base I was at, there was like 4 or 5 different wings. And I remember working with some really great command chiefs. And when they would come in and give presentations, they would give presentations to these different professional development seminars. And they would talk about how to get promoted a lot. That was a hot topic. You get involved in this, get this type of education, do this, do that.
Sure.
But what we would always encourage people to do what it took to get promoted, but we wouldn't always prepare them for the expectations once they have that next rank.
Right.
Right?
We don't
So
teach them how to be that ranked. We just teach them how to
exactly,
get
we
there.
just teach them how to get there, right? So they would get excited and be like, yeah, I'm going to do this, I'm going to get this, I'm going to get that. And then, but here's what you have to expect. You have to expect the more people you supervise, the more personalities you're dealing with, the more wants, the more desires, the more, the more individuals that, you now are responsible for. And these things are just as valuable about learning from how to deal with difficult conversations and difficult people, are just as important as knowing, the steps to get promoted,
Yeah, absolutely. I tell people all the time, it took me 4 years of being a master sergeant to learn how to be a senior NCO. Like, I was a high performing tech sergeant, like many other people who promote to the senior NCO rank, and I continue to behave in the way that always got lauded, right? So I was doing the things, I was a bull in a china shop, trying to, make my way. But as a senior NCO, there's a transition that nobody tells you about. Like, something occurs, and the high performing tech sergeant, bull in a china shop approach stops working overnight. And you don't know why, because you built your career and your success based off of doing things at all cost, and just circumventing all the processes and all the other stuff, right? You're just getting stuff done, and then it stops working, and you're confused and you're left out in the cold because you don't know what's going on.
Right.
And you learn, like, now relationships matter more than any other time in your career. Like, you can't do those things. Like, you have to adhere to a process because you need efficiencies in your team, and processes have their place. Like, they're not always great, but when you're managing lots of resources or lots of people, processes are very helpful to help you stay on top of those things. And so, and to that point too, there's a chapter called "Promote Collegiality Over Competition," where I talk about, just trying to outcompete everybody else, and really what that did to the teams. And you don't create successful teams if you have people always trying to one up another person, right? You have to build a team with unity in mind, and knowing the strong suits of each individual member and how to apply them. And if you're continually just trying to compete and check the boxes and do those things, sure, you might get promoted up to a point. But I know, as a chief, and I'm sure that you guys can speak to this as well, I recognize the people who are building team. I recognize the people who are building consensus, and I will absolutely go out of my way to help the people who I know are team oriented well over those people who are self-serving.
Right.
Yeah. The ones that are, like Joe says, willing to take a sacrifice fly or take the bunt for the team instead of trying to get a home run every time.
It's huge. It's a huge thing for a team to have the guy who's willing to take the out, to move the runner. It's a really, it's one of those leadership traits that I don't think people put enough emphasis on, but it's absolutely so important because it ultimately helps the team win.
Right. Right. And that's, and I think we don't do that enough because, we're talking about accomplishments where we're seeing the stuff that's really easily, viewable, the tangible items versus really identifying character, in those leadership in the senior non-commissioned officers. And I love what you talked about, because when you go from, the technical expert, you're an executor. And then when you suddenly transition to now we need you to be the facilitator, right? And a team builder. And
Yeah.
it's like, nobody says, hey, this is what you're supposed to do now
Yeah.
necessarily, right? Not quite. And they don't, and also just to Scott's point, it's not like they teach you how to do that necessarily either, because they're
No.
just teaching you how to get the bullets down on paper so you can
Right.
get promoted.
Yeah, they're not going to tell you, hey, this is what you do when the young airman comes into your office crying, bawling because,
Mm-hmm.
this happened in their life, or, like, whoa, this, I'm looking in the PDG. This is not in there.
Right.
It's not in the CDCs on how to deal with, people going through divorce. And, how do I, as a supervisor, as a leader, how do I manage those things, or how do I deal with those things? And so, it's tough because we don't have that clean transition, Oh, I mean, it's like you said, you go from an executor, Joe, like you said, to all of a sudden you're and a lot of times a social worker, a psychologist, or
Mm-hmm.
a counselor.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, your mission becomes people, right? It used to
Right.
Yeah.
be buttons and fun stuff, and like, you got to go on the cool trips and do all the fun things, and then overnight your mission becomes people, and you have to let go of the fun stuff, and you have to allow other people to go have fun, and you have to make those things, and you have to facilitate those opportunities for people, right? And so
Yeah.
it's very hard because you want to still do it. And yesterday you were a tech sergeant, and today you're a master sergeant, and you still have the technical knowledge and know-how, but now you have to let go and you have to share. And it's a very hard transition for a lot of people
Yeah.
because it's different.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I had some folks trying to do that too, as a master sergeant, they're trying to go do that. And I'm like, no, I need you to lead and develop your folks so that they can do it. And it's like, no, I really like doing this. I was like, yeah, but you're getting paid
That's
master
great.
sergeant pay to be a tech sergeant. All
Exactly.
right.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. Well, and that's always the challenge too, because people will scream up and down why they deserve a promotion,
Mhm.
right? I should get the next level rank. I should get this. I should get that. But their mindset is really they just want to be a high paid technician,
Mhm.
right? They don't want that responsibility of dealing with the personal side and the human side of things. They just want to go out and execute mission, and that makes it tough when you try to explain to people this is probably why you shouldn't be promoted to master or senior or chief, because you can't be a chief master sergeant still working the floor.
Right.
Now you can step
Right.
in as a chief master sergeant and working the floor when you need it, but that's not your overall job, is to not be that technician. And there's a
Yeah.
lot of, yeah, go ahead, Robert.
Oh, I was going to say, yeah, one of my favorite questions that I ask, especially whenever I'm on a hiring panel for like senior NCOs, is what have you done for somebody you're in direct competition with?
Mm.
And the answers or the look on people's faces is pretty comical at times, like, because a lot of times they can't answer that because they've just been competing and pushing people in front of the bus or stepping on people to get where they're at, that they don't even understand the question in a lot of ways. And you're
Yeah.
just like, what have you done? What have you done to make that sacrifice bunch, right? Like,
Mhm.
what have you done for somebody else to put them in a position, even though you were in competition with them? And when
Mhm.
I do get those answers from people, which doesn't happen all that often, that's everything that you need to know about a leader comes out in those moments.
Right.
And
Mhm.
and that's when you go, yes, this guy, he gets it. Like, this girl, she gets it. They understand that it's about building the team, about doing the right thing, having integrity. Those are the things that I want in a senior leader, not a person who can check all the boxes. Those things are important because checking the box allows you to know the process to help somebody. That's the only thing I really get from it, is if I don't go through these things, if I don't apply for these, senior NCO PME courses with
Mhm.
other services and the JPME and all the other stuff, then how can I go tell somebody to do it, or how can I help them in their process? So checking the boxes for me allows me to be able to say, okay, these are the things, this is how you do it, this is why you need to do it, so that way I can understand it, right? A leader should always be the first to the door. And if you're telling your guys to go get something or do something that you haven't done, you have no
Mhm.
credibility. You have to go get those things, even if it does look like box checking. but you're getting it so you can provide an education to your people, not so you
Yeah.
can position yourself for a promotion.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And going back to that low performers thing, some people, because you do a really good job of like, okay, how do you think differently to make yourself, produce a little bit more? And I'm thinking it's like low performers are there. They also give you a purpose as a leader. Because if everybody was executing perfectly and superior, you're like, do you really need to even be there? I mean,
Yeah.
so that's
Right.
that's something that we should always consider as well when we walk into chaos.
Yeah. Hey, Robert, I got a question for you. So you do work with civilian organizations. What do you notice any differences in their leadership styles or strategies that may be contrast to the military, or any similarities?
A lot of similarities. So some of the civilian ones that I work with obviously have retired members who work in there, and the similarities come over. Um, I do see in like civilian work with like where my wife works, they do a lot of things with like Myers-Briggs and stuff like that, and
Yeah.
helping people. And I do some Myers-Briggs stuff. You can read about that in the book in one of the chapters. Um, but helping you to understand how a person how a person can be connected with better, right? So how do they receive and transmit communication, for instance? That can be a really big deal.
Yeah.
If you're like me, I'm an ENTP. I'm a big picture guy. Like I like to paint a picture. I'll use my arms. Like I'm all over the place, right? And
Mm-hmm.
people who aren't like me don't receive my communication well. They want it in a PowerPoint. They want it
Sure.
very concise. They want it very
Step by
detail
step.
oriented.
Yeah.
Right. And I didn't get that for the longest time. So I kept on trying to communicate what felt comfortable to me and what had gotten a response. And in one of my units, I couldn't get anything through to these people. Like I was like, what is going on? Like, how come you can't get this? And I learned about Myers-Briggs, and I learned
Yeah.
how people's personality preferences, right? It's not a pigeonhole. It's not who you are,
Mm-hmm.
but it does help exploit some of the preferences that you have as a person. And if you can cater to those preferences, then you can be more effective at communicating and building bonds with people. And that's something that her job does really, really well. And I've really taken to that because it just helps you understand and remember that everyone's unique and everybody needs just a little bit of tweak. And
Hmm.
as a leader, right, you should be able to make those small adjustments for your team to be able to connect with them. And you can only do that by educating yourself about who they are, what their personalities are, what their preferences are, and then doing those small things to make it easy for them to understand so they can come in on the projects and help you build the team as well.
Sure. It's like the platinum rule. So the golden rule is treat others how you want to be treated, but the platinum rule is treat others how they want to be treated. And
Nice.
and I've
Absolutely.
found, yeah. And so I work. So I'm retired from the military, but I work in a training and development capacity, and that's one of the things that we deal with a lot of our clients, because they work in industrial environments, and some of them are in like construction and some of the blue collar type work environments, and that's a challenge because they're not taught uh, profile systems or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
They go out, turn wrenches, do whatever they have to do. And so we're finding when we educate them on those type of personality preferences and communication styles, that they're seeing a huge improvement in their productivity, because now they're getting more out of people because people are feeling appreciated and valued.
That and you can also, right, you can understand people enough to not take offense in some cases, right? Because
Yeah.
I'm an
Mm-hmm.
extrovert. And whenever a person doesn't respond the way that I would expect them to when I was younger, I thought they just didn't like me.
Yeah.
Um, in reality, they're just maybe introverted, and you just have to take that into account. Like maybe they're not going to join you at the social hour because they don't like the social interactions. It has
Mm-hmm.
nothing to do with liking you or not. They don't like that environment, and so they're not going to come to it. So once you understand those things about people, you can usually take less offense, and you can
Yeah.
build better relationships.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And maybe some of them didn't like you, but it's not the
That
default
is
thing, right?
It's
that is very likely. I got my first 1-star Amazon review with no comments,
Oh.
no nothing, and so I assume that it's somebody I potentially shared a negative experience with
Yeah.
and wrote about in the book. Right, I wrote about them vaguely, but
Oh
yeah,
yeah.
somebody tried to stick it to me on that one, and so then I just rewrote a whole new story about it. And published it in the revision of the book because
That's
I thought it
awesome.
was really important that sometimes people just don't get you, or
Yeah.
Right.
somebody tries to create an obstacle, but for me, right, whenever I encounter hardships, I know that I'm on the right path. Like the right
Mhm.
path has always had bumps for me. So
Yeah.
whenever I feel a bump, I go, must be on the right path
Right.
because
That's
there's that bump and I knew it was coming.
right. And that's a great perspective to have. I mean, that's what, we had an episode called Broism when we were talking about, the obstacle is the way, take it, go head on and grow from all the different situations that you kind of endure and experience through life.
Yeah, absolutely. I 100% agree with that. Those obstacles are the things that push us out of those comfort zones and help create change in our lives.
Hmm. Yeah. So, hey, Rob, to transition, there's another thing that I remember seeing when we were communicating, being yourself when people resist you. Can you dive into that a little bit?
Oh, absolutely. So one of the things I think everyone I've talked to has faced is you find yourself in these environments in your work center and people just don't seem to get you.
Hmm.
And the way that they try to develop you or mentor you is to encourage you to be like someone else that they like.
Right.
I've tried that, and I got to the point where I was suicidal
Mm.
because I was an imposter. I was trying to be a person who my leadership team liked, and it wasn't me.
Right.
And so I actually got very, very depressed, and I didn't enjoy going to work, and I didn't feel like a genuine person. So what I've learned, right, and I think you guys, I actually have talked about this in the past, is being the best version of yourself. Develop your people to be the best version of who they are, not
Right.
this other person that you like how they do things, because they're not that other person, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely. Yeah.
so,
Don't try to put your white picket fence on somebody else. Right.
right, I think Oscar Wilde's quote in that chapter is, "Be yourself because everyone else is taken."
Yeah.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
that always just reminds me, like, yeah, you're not supposed to be like someone else. Like you
Right.
you are who you are, so be who you are, but just be the best version of yourself and recognize that we all have things to work on. I make mistakes all the time. I make mistakes as a husband, I make mistakes as a Christian, I make mistakes as a father, I make mistakes as a chief. I make mistakes all the time. I make mistakes in my book. There's probably a couple typos still, even though I've reworked it 5 times, right? But that's okay, right? Because every time it gets a little bit better. I learn something. I can handle a situation. I can speak into a person's life a little bit better, right? So don't shy away from those negatives in your life because they're really creating a better person in the end.
Yeah, and I would say that trying to live up to a standard that's not your own, I guess, what am I trying to say? It can be exhausting trying to be somebody you're not. You
Absolutely.
know what I mean? Like it just wears on you. It can and make it's completely exhausting, and it makes you work so much harder than when you just be yourself. And you get
Yeah.
more done
Yeah,
that way.
and you have to recognize too. So I was in that situation. I was a senior NCO of the year for the group and for the squadron and all these other stuff, and my commander still didn't stratify me for that year's evaluation. And so what I learned was I was even competing against her ideal version of a leader. No matter how hard I tried, like I wasn't going to fit her mold,
Yeah.
and I had to eventually accept that that was okay. Like, look, we're just not going to come eye to eye on who I am as a person and as a leader and who she wanted me to be. And so I chose to part ways, and I applied and was able to get promoted into another unit. But, sometimes you're just not going to be a good fit. Like, make sure that one of the mistakes that I made was being kind of poisonous and being disrespectful at times. And
Ooh,
that's
yeah.
something that I regret, but that I absolutely learned from, right? So make sure that you maintain that foundation of respect, even when you are in a disagreement or not in a good relationship, because those are the things that will keep you moving in the right direction, having that respect, showing that respect, being extra professional. But if you start undermining people and stuff, like it creates really bad environments for everyone.
And a lot of times your character will precede you wherever you go next. And if people are feeling like you're slighting them or undermining them, that word will travel to the next assignment or the next job, or so but if you have maintain that character and that discipline of being respectful and being a team player as much as you can, that goes a long way.
It does. The Air Force is a real small world. I mean, take it from, two chiefs right now and a retired chief. Like, you guys can, I'm sure, attest to that. Like, one or two assignments after you leave somewhere, you run into somebody and you hope that they still have a good impression of you, because they might be in a pretty critical position for where you're at.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When I came into the dark ages, we didn't, PCS, we didn't have internet and we didn't have email. So when you PCS to a new assignment, you were lucky to know somebody from that base. You know what I mean? Like I don't know who's there. But nowadays you connect, months before you get out there, or you've shared an deployment or assignment, a previous assignment with those people. So you're able to engage and get a feel for it. But,
you guys got a great, I mean, it's a great point. I was thinking about something that happened not too long ago. I remember there was a team of people that worked in an organization that I was in, and I just got CC'd on the email, and it was like, hey, we failed an inspection on whatever program, right? So, and there's like 4 people involved in that program. And then everybody's like, hey, we're gonna have a meeting to discuss how we're gonna resolve this stuff and how we're gonna get better. And one person emails us back, I'm CC'd on it again, it says, these are the reasons why, this person did it wrong and this person did it wrong. And, basically absolving themselves of everything. And I'm like, yeah, that didn't help you at all. You have no idea what that made you look like.
yeah,
Right.
They're the bus driver, right?
Right.
Backing up over people.
Yeah. I think it's interesting because I look at them and I was like, oh, they don't even realize that was inappropriate. You know what I mean? So there's a coaching teachable moment. But what I really like about what you're kind of talking about there, Rob, was, because we talk about authentic leadership a lot, but a lot of times we don't. I mean, I don't think I've even heard the term together, authentic followership. And
yeah.
I mean, being yourself as a, an executor or follower or whatever, I mean, that's just as important. I mean, we need to be ourselves always. And like you said, the best version of ourselves. And I think that's just a perfect way to state it.
And to that point, as a subordinate, whenever you're in that position, right, make sure that you have the courage to communicate to your supervisor what it is that you need, right? So that way that person can develop who you are, not who they're having to guess that you want to be.
Sure.
So tell them what you need. Be clear, like, hey, this is just like you would in a relationship. In a healthy relationship, the other person knows what your needs are, and they can cater to it, right? The 5 love languages. So tell your supervisor what your work love language is. So that way you guys can build a relationship, and he can or she can treat you the way that you need to be treated to help you develop.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. I mean, that's some great stuff. And your book, we're definitely gonna make sure we put it onto our show notes. But you're also working on another one, right?
I am, yeah. So hopefully by the end of the year. So I had 10 questions that went out to a bunch of senior enlisted leaders. Questions like, what do you tell somebody who's transitioning into the senior NCO role, right? And so I got some really amazing responses back from people, and I didn't get quite as many as I wanted, but you can always revise, right? One of the great things about self-publishing is that you can revise the book at any time. And I believe that once people read some of these really incredible inputs that we have for these 10 questions, they're going to be really impressed and they're going to want to contribute. But some really, really amazing insights. What do you say to a frustrated airman? And just having, hundreds of years worth of wisdom from all these different people speaking into these pretty general but very common issues. It's just been really, really awesome to see the answers and the perspective. And it's made me think. And one of the great things about the people who have taken part in this is, number one, they've written down these answers. A lot of them have shared them with their team, which I think has been pretty cool. And a lot of them have also been like, I never thought about some of these things. And I really had to do some digging in my head to say, what would I say in this situation? And so hopefully that'll be out by the end of the year. I'm still working on the title. I think I have it, but I'm not quite sure. So I'm not gonna display it here.
Yeah. Very cool.
And it goes back to the importance of allowing people to be themselves, because when you have a team, coming from a leader, if I have a group of diverse personalities and diverse perspectives, we have more options to choose from on how to be successful. But if I'm expecting a clone of me, if I got maybe a team of 15 people and they're all clones of Scott Green, we're singularly focused, and we're only giving ourselves so many options for success. And that's why I appreciate what you're doing with this book, Robert, the one you're working on now, is you get those different perspectives. And I hope that they are all varied, and I hope they are unique. So that way people can go, you know what? They can find that one perspective that really talks to them. Like you said, you could read a book and go, like you said earlier, we were talking about maybe some of the reading lists that are out there. They're written by officers and generals, and you can read that book and go, that makes no sense to me. But you can also read books now and that have different perspectives that you go, oh yeah, that talks to me, that talks to my personality. And now I know that there is a way forward for me to grow as an individual.
Yeah, and with the inputs I got from this book, they absolutely vary very widely. So I talked to different genders and ethnic groups, and so you get different perspectives. Now you won't know. I'm not going to put anyone's name in it, but right, it'll be like leader one, and you'll have perspectives from all kinds of different people about different things. Even the length of the responses are very different. Some of them
That's
are very
awesome.
concise, and some of them are very long, and some of them are right in the middle, right? So you're gonna kind of, I think, get all the flavors that you want in the answers, and I'm confident that people will find an answer that probably fits what they needed to hear.
Yeah, so like our blog page, when we first started it, it's almost been 2 years.
Yeah.
It's almost been 2 years.
It's actually been 2 years. Yeah, May, right? May of 2018.
August.
Oh, was it August? Okay.
Yeah, it's August.
Yeah.
But we have, every week we have new articles from people providing their perspective. And a lot of times the first thing they'll ask is, well, what do you want me to write about? Who am I targeting? And we're like, no, this is your perspective. We might do some editing to make people, for a little bit for readability, but we don't change the tone or the topic or anything like that. And it's great because we get a lot of great feedback because they like the idea of, reading different perspectives.
Yeah. So I think we just had one of those married moments where I forgot our anniversary, Scott.
Yeah.
I had the wrong month. But by the way, Rob, we brought up that blog thing on purpose. So we'd like you to contribute, please.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm constantly writing articles.
Yeah.
I'm working on a couple of them right now. I take everything that I see and experience, right, and I get out into the world and I go, man, that was kind of interesting. And I think through whatever situation I've just encountered, and I go, okay, what is the lesson in this? Like I'm experiencing this for a reason, and then I'll write things. And I've made 5 revisions to the Paperback Mentor already. So the newest version has, I think, 3 new stories in it. I've added a couple of questions. I think there's an additional 6 or 7 pages in the book. One of them's called Successful Mind Fields, like in your mind, and how to create a successful mental state. And I use a metaphor like farming to include like planting good seeds, resting the fields, right, so that way the soil can have time to recuperate and things like that. So I'm always writing things based off of the experiences that I have every single day, and trying to help people relate to the challenges that we face as humans every single day, especially 2020, man. 2020 presents a lot of opportunities to learn.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And so many things. I mean, you just got to have the right mindset, like you're saying, and maybe even ask yourself those tough questions. But, why is this happening to me? And, what matters to me right now, and et cetera, right? Those are the ones that would really help you kind of figure out what 2020 is all about. And like I know for a lot of us, I know it seems like it's a tough challenge times. Some people are really suffering, but I know there's also a lot of perspectives that come from this year and what we've gained. And some of us just needed a hard reset. I know I did.
Yeah.
I needed a hard reset after 2 overseas tours. It really helped me kind of understand what's most important. And also it definitely helped us connect, Rob, and we really appreciate you and everything that you're doing.
I appreciate what you guys are doing too. I think it's great that, we all got focused on the from where we were at doing all of our stuff with the kids and the crazy trips and all the other stuff, to it became very focused and it all came online, right? And so like you were saying, I thought I was like on an island of writing from an enlisted perspective, or sharing or leading from an enlisted perspective, and I think I was a little bit afraid that some people would be like, oh, you can't do that, like you're not allowed to do that. And you know what, nobody has said anything like I can't do anything yet. And right. And so it's interesting. Like, you can't do a podcast and call yourself a chief. Like, yeah, you can. Like, and
Yeah.
people need to hear those things. And you're
Right.
not breaking any rules, and you're sharing in a way that is finally opening up doors in people's lives that don't have the leadership that they need
Yeah.
or want in their places, so they can reach out online and they can listen to your podcast and watch your short clips and your videos, or read the Paperback Mentor, or
Hmm.
any of the other things that these enlisted leaders are doing to help reach people. And that's what I've taken most out of 2020 is, yeah, it took a lot away from us, but it gave us a focus that if you want to take advantage of in a way to spread a message of positivity or resiliency or whatever else, the opportunity has finally presented itself. And we didn't have that opportunity before.
Yeah.
Yeah.
100%.
I think
Man.
too, allowed people in leadership positions to show their personality a little bit better. Because, before their platform was like a commander's call, or,
Right.
and now their platform is a podcast or a minute video or
DJing.
and DJing, right?
Yeah.
Everyone's has this,
Cooking, chefs.
everyone's
Yeah.
got this opportunity to kind of show themselves a little bit and show that they can be vulnerable in this
Yeah.
situation.
Yeah. We're all
And,
humans.
and how we're learning and growing through it. But I think what I'm finding the most value so far is I'm learning a lot from other people. I'm learning a lot from Rob. I'm learning a lot from, like, just all these amazing people that we get to talk to on this podcast. And even the ones that I'm not on because of scheduling, as soon as Joe posts them in our folder, I'm listening to them because I want to glean something from it. So it's amazing. We do have some challenges, but we also have some great opportunities to grow.
Yeah, there's no big reason for people to say there's no mentorship opportunities out there like back in the day, because maybe it's not directly in your chain for whatever reason. If maybe you're not wanting to see it the way we kind of talked about earlier, like, hey, this is what not to do, right? Maybe you're having a hard time seeing that, but there's a lot of opportunities out there, like the Paperback Mentor, and all the stuff on Air Force Quarantine University, and legendary leaders. There's so many things out there for people to be able to glean some wisdom for. So if you're not finding it's because you're being lazy, at this point. I mean, you can find it.
Playing too much Overwatch.
Yeah, well, that's a cool game, though. That's a cool game. But hey, Rob, so whenever we wrap these up, we like to wrap them up with a leadership rapid fire. So I think we should just stop calling it rapid, because it's not really rapid at all. But we have a series of 4 questions we'd love for you to answer. And really, when I ask you the question, it's going to be how you interpret it, right? Because we actually appreciate the different interpretations of the question and the answers that come out. It really makes it a better variety for our folks. So would you like to partake?
Of course. Yeah.
All right, cool. So
what if he said no?
I know, I would have been like, okay, cool.
All right, that's the show.
Llama's out.
Yeah. Hey, no, I felt like I did a pretty decent job. I didn't make a fool out of myself, so I'm just gonna take my money and walk away here.
Boom.
Nice. Yeah. So cool. All right. Question number 1. What is your favorite leadership trait?
Authenticity, without a doubt. You can always see it in a person, and whether or not they're right or wrong, the authentic leader who admits when he's wrong, or actually shows true compassion. He's not doing it or acting in a way because he's expected to. He's doing it because it comes from who he is. It's coming from the heart. And I can remember a thank you from an authentic leader meaning more to me than any quarterly award or annual award or anything else I've ever received. That authentic leader saying thank you for doing an amazing job meant and has meant more to me in my military career than anything else I've ever received as far as accolades go.
That's awesome. All right. Question number 2. What is your favorite quote?
Ooh, well, if you've read the book, there's a lot of quotes that I like. I think, probably, I guess my favorite quote would be from Henry Ford. And it's printed on the inside of my wallet. My wife got it for me. And it said, if I had asked people what they wanted, they would have said faster horses. And to me, what that means is you have to think outside of what people are normally used to thinking or hearing, right? Like
Hmm.
whenever he developed the assembly line to produce the car, like people wanted horses and they were comfortable with horses, and he was trying to change the entire world, but people couldn't at first get on to the same wavelength as him because they didn't understand, like, no, this isn't a horse, this is a car, right? And so being able to think past how people think, the barriers that exist for a lot of people, the faster horse, and thinking about the car instead. I think that's probably one of my favorite quotes because of that level of innovation and that vision that you have to create the next big thing.
That's awesome. All right, cool. Question number 3. Okay, besides the Paperback Mentor, what is a book that you would recommend to an aspiring leader?
I just read the book called The Choice by Og Mandino, and it really had a profound effect on me. It's a very short book, really, and it talks about a guy who was living a busy life, very successful, had kids and stuff, and he changed his world. He changed what he was doing, and he actually went down the path of becoming a writer.
Hmm.
And just reading that short story, it really spoke to me about, like, what choices do we make, like, and why do we do what we do? And right, he goes through some hardships, and he comes out on the other side. I won't ruin it for you, but
Hmm.
it was a really good story to read, and it's short, but it's had a really profound effect on me this last month or two.
Awesome. Great. All right. Final question. And we'll make sure we add that book to the show notes as well. We always do. All right. So final question. This is the deep one. At the Llama Lounge, we're all about life learning and leadership. So however you want to interpret this question, but how do you find your harmony between life learning and leadership?
Uh, I don't feel like I find it most of the time. You know, I like to juggle a lot of things, and sometimes I drop almost all of them. So, what I try to do is I give myself grace. Like, I know that I'm going to make mistakes, and I have to be okay with saying, look, this isn't working. What do I need to do to change, right? Hey, I'm off balance. I'm so focused on my career. And you'll see in the Paperback Mentor in the first chapter, this 3-chamber hourglass that I create this concept around, where it's my family, myself, and my career. And I'm always constantly trying to turn that hourglass assembly over to keep each one of those chambers equally full with sand,
Hmm.
because that's what I need to do, right? And sometimes you're going to get off balance when you deploy. Your family chamber drains down, but if you focus during those times, you can really fill up yourself and your career buckets, right? But then when you come home, you need to turn the hourglass assembly over, and you need to pour back into your family because you have more than enough sand in those other areas at that time. So that's how I try to keep my balance, using that concept that I developed, that I put in the book, to just say, look, constantly change your focus. That way you can always make sure that things that are important in your life are getting the attention that they need.
Fantastic. That's awesome, man. I love that
Yeah.
analogy. And definitely you've dropped some gems on us today. We really
Yeah.
appreciate you
Yeah.
taking the time, man. So the book is available in all mediums, correct?
It is available as an ebook and as a
Okay,
paperback through
cool.
Amazon. Yes, the
Cool.
Nice.
Paperback Mentor.
Cool.
Very cool.
And pretty soon you're gonna be working on the audio. That's gonna be awesome. And that's gonna get out there
Yes.
for everybody. So
And
Go
the
ahead.
reason for the title, just to let you know, is it's because some people don't have a mentor, and
mhm.
so it's a paperback that you can refer to as a mentor, as you would a mentor. So there's lessons and things that you can learn like you would from a mentor, but it's in paperback form.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah, very
Very cool.
cool. All right. Thanks, brother. And we will make sure this
Hi.
gets out there. Go ahead, Scott. What were you gonna say?
Yeah, I was going to ask, are there any other ways people can contact you or get a hold of you? Yeah.
Yeah, so you can write me at thepaperbackmentor@gmail.com is
Got
my
it.
email. I am definitely working on some additional like lesson plan stuff in the future to try to help teams who want a more detail oriented kind of classroom information. So, but I also do like online mentoring sessions. I do all of it free right now, as long as it works in my schedule. I really just want to spread the message and help people have a new perspective on things. And, this isn't for profit. This is for passion.
That's nice.
So I don't need to get paid to do something I'm passionate about. I don't, like, eventually, right? Like Zig Ziglar says, if you take care of enough people, then they'll take care of you. It's essentially what his quote is. And right, if you make sure enough people get what they need, then you'll get what you need.
There you
And I
go.
want to be, known as a person who makes a difference in people's lives, and I can do that by doing things that make a difference in people's lives.
Yeah, that's great views. So once again, thanks, Rob. We really appreciate you taking the time to come on here and share everything, your vulnerability, your experiences, and your great wisdom with our listeners. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I feel so much smarter now after this conversation. That took away a lot.
Well, good. I'm glad that I was able to share some of my experience. I really appreciate the opportunity, and I think it's incredible what you guys are doing with the podcast, and getting this media and this messaging out to people, no matter where they're at. So they can listen to it in their car or at home or wherever at. So I think it's really important to do these things to help develop our people wherever they're at, whatever they're going through. And so congratulations to your 2-year anniversary. Like, you guys make a great couple. I really enjoyed my time with you.
For the blog, folks, for the blog. I'm married.
Well, sweet. Thanks, Rob. And to all our listeners, once as always, be safe, stay healthy, and llamas are out.
Later. Thanks for tuning in to the Llama Lounge podcast. Be sure to visit the homepage for links to products and services related to this episode. And don't forget to subscribe to the show on your podcast platform of choice. See you next time.